Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 74 of the Cognitive Podcast. Yay! I am recording at 6:34 p.m. on Monday, April 11th, 2022. Also, show notes can be found at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com because I'm having trouble mounting them on Ravelry as I dictate this. So I am probably going to walk through Ravelry and see if I can just line by line rebuild this one, but I just haven't had that kind of time so far. Meanwhile, let's see what's new, shall we, in Gemma's Knitiverse. Oh, speaking of which, warm thanks to Gigi Knitmore because you are so damn cool. And it was great to talk to you. And to Danny McKenzie. And all I can say is both of you, thank you. That made a world of difference. And that's all I'm going to say. Because we don't talk about stitches. No. The rest of you, that's all you get. Meanwhile, what's on my hooks and needles? I know, I think I'm so clever. I'm sitting here laughing at myself because I'm not letting anybody else in on the joke. So perhaps my warm thanks should go to all of you because there are moments I really wonder, why are they listening? But thank you. And thank you, Gigi, and thank you, Danny. Those were great Zoom calls. Oh, what was I saying? Yes, what's on my hooks and needles? In progress, since I haven't really finished anything. They don't know yet. Well, if you go to the show notes, particularly at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com, because I can't get them mounted on Ravelry the way I want them. They keep just cutting off midstream mysteriously. But in those show notes, you will see a picture of the don't know yet so far, that we did reach day 100, which was April 10th, which was yesterday. And to celebrate, I counted, found I have 106 of the things, 106 blocks, in crochet, and I thought, okay, this would be a fine time to display the general idea of the pattern I want to use. And it's kind of a sort of starburst out of the bottom left corner of color, starting with darkest and heading to lightest, if you were paying attention with the temperature blanket last year. And frankly, if you were paying this close an attention, I'm a little worried about you. But if you were paying attention, you will notice this is the same progression of temperatures. Obviously, I didn't use black. That was bought to be an edging. But I got a lot of black yarn, so it's the bottom left corner. So I think the plan here is to use up every other color and leave the black alone, because the black may be what is stitching them together to give a stained glass effect, or maybe the edging, or any of the above. But you can see the first 100 squares there, more or less, because there's 6 more not in the picture. You can see the pattern they're forming there to go from darkest at the bottom left corner and up and across towards the red end of the scale. It's kind of a roy-g bib, more than a dark to light. If you're hearing scraping noises, that would be Eleanor in the background asking to come in. And she's not going to get to, but we will get to that later. But it's exciting. Also, you may have noticed that April 10th, as I said, was the 100th day of the year. So that was 100 blocks day. So you know I had to sit down and figure out what would 200 blocks day. And by my math, that would be July 19th. So we are heading towards July 19th. When I get to 200 blocks, I will figure out what the closest square is to 200. I'm not doing the math in my head right now, kids. I'm sorry. And I will probably try to post an image to let you see how the pattern's coming along. Do I have enough to get 361 blocks, which of course is 19 squared? Don't know. But looking forward to finding out, because I'll tell you, I've got 100 blocks. I can barely tell the difference in the pile of leftover yarn. So that's pretty exciting. Meanwhile, no, the Nora Hart scarf and the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery, they're both on hold. Because I kind of lost my mind a little bit this week. There's been a lot of pressure at work that I won't bore you with. But I got a huge amount done on Twin Faces brick. In fact, there's a picture of it. It has indeed pooled a bit weirdly. I am down on probably the last 10 rows of the 1x1 ribbing on it as I record this. And I started to get really tense about this, thinking I need a sweater of my own. If I make someone else a sweater, I must give myself a sweater. And those of you who are paying close attention would say, but Gemma, didn't you start winding yarn? Didn't you have this beautiful blue-purple called Wales Road from Malabrigo Rios? I did. I wound 5 skeins, and you know what happened? Yesterday I lost my mind. And I just ran through my stash and found all this hand-spun in pinks and purples. Seriously, I'm just going to look like an oversized Easter egg. I went feral. Totally lost my marbles. I went feral. I started knitting my hand spun and couldn't figure out what to knit it into. And hats seemed a bit blah. And so if you go into the show notes, you can see the pictures of the color sequence. And it's very pretty. Do I have enough? I'm not sure. But it lands on a color that I believe I can buy from some drug dealer, some yarn dyer or other to finish this. Will I stripe the arms to match the body? Will I just make purple arms? Who really knows? I don't care. All I can tell you is I'm almost to the place where you knit in the round, working my way down the back of the brick, and I'm loving it. And if you're saying, but Gemma, whose yarn would you buy to finish this sweater? There are my 2 favorite resources, Lisa Souza and Webb's. Do you feel better now? Also, Dizzy Blondes. The weather got into the 80s this week, and it made me realize that spinning season, which is the summer, is a-comin'. So I'm looking at all my spinning resources and my semi-finished projects. We'll see. This could be very, very interesting. I have a lot of leftover stuff I'd like to get back to, and I'd like to go to my poor Ashford e-spinner and clean it up because it's just choked with dust, and I love it so. But my favorite e-spinner, I'm afraid, is the electric eel wheel. I can't explain why. I just love the thing. It's not as reliable as the Ashford, but it's also not as clunky and heavy. So there you go. Let's move on to a strategy, shall we? I've been talking about day-to-day emotional management, and that, of course, led me to talk about the ACT skills, the acceptance and commitment therapy skills. And we've talked about the self in context, and we've talked about thought diffusion versus sort of cognitive fusion, where you get stuck in your thoughts. And this leads me to the here and now. Yes, that is an issue in mental health, that most of the patients you meet are simply not dealing in the here and now. And that's a very big statement, but let me tell you, after all this time, it is nonetheless very true. It is an old truth that's been cited in many sources that depressed people or sad people are living in the past. Because something bad has happened to them, they believe that it defines them. Of course, cognitive fusion right there. And of course, failure of thought and context. So they hold on to this bad idea. If I lost once, I will always lose. This goes deeper into the realm of trauma without mocking victims, but that's where victims get stuck. This bad thing, this terrible thing happened to me, and now it's always going to happen. That based on that bad thing, I project a negative future. I can never be safe from this bad thing again. So living in the past means you have no context. You are frozen in that moment. And you can't unhinge your thoughts. You're trapped. You define that moment as your life. Okay? So one of the key bases of successful mental health recovery is to live in this time, is to remind yourself, I'm not there anymore, that's over. Pinch yourself and say, is this real? Am I dreaming? Whatever. And when we work with post-traumatic stress disorder after a tragedy, that's one of the things we work with, is you're not there anymore. You're acting as though you're still in Afghanistan with the bombs dropping, or you're still being assaulted, or whatever. Now that sounds very blithe. Hey, listen, get over it. You're not there anymore. It's over. Why don't you just get over it? No, that's not what we're doing. What we are doing is the subject of another strategy episode in another podcast. But the reality is that if you're going to heal, you have to come into the here and now. You have to live right here, right now. So, of course, now you're all sitting on the edges of your chairs and saying, gosh, Gemma, that's what depression is. So what is anxiety? Anxiety is predicting a negative future, where you're trying to over-control a future that you can't predict and have limited control over. So that would be anxiety. And so too much future anxiety, too much past depression, you can right away hear they're going to be linked, and that they are two sides of a coin. And we do pay attention to that. Someone comes in with depression, and we often wonder, where'd that come from? What's the base or the etiology? And it may be, I've been so anxious, I've been trying so hard to control my life, I can't. I simply can't anymore. And I get sad, I get helpless. Depression and anxiety differ from each other in other ways. Anxiety is too much control, that I can't control what's going on, so I start adopting pointless behaviors that don't do anything. For example, pacing the floor when I'm anxious. And it's not really doing that much for you. There's some argument for you're burning off the excess energy that your stress is generating, but it's not enough. Depression is the other way, where you just quit. You just lie down and go, nothing's going to work. So, I don't want to oversimplify depression versus anxiety, but both of them are based on, I'm not living here and now in this moment. One of the best examples I've ever heard of that was on September 11th, 2001, of course. We had an act of terrorism, Twin Towers came down. And I had a friend in Oregon who could not let go of that, who was just trapped in that, they're coming for us, it's going to be bad. And she was a Buddhist at the time. And she went to her temple, and the guy in charge said to her, you seem really, really stressed today. And she said, look, I just can't get over that. And he said the best thing to her. He said, why is the now not good enough for you? You're sitting here in Portland, Oregon, in a Buddhist temple. It's peaceful, it's quiet. You have the time and the leisure to come here. You have enough food, you have warm clothes. Why is this now not good enough for you? And the lovely thing is it really broke through her funk, her anxiety, that she realized that's right, that nobody is ever promised more than this moment. And this moment is really quite a beautiful thing. I'm sitting in front of my window and I'm looking down across the Escondido Valley, and I'm looking at this insanely beautiful row of clouds that are just skimming the tops of the mountains across the valley from me. And those mountains are sunlit, whereas the ones I'm sitting in, the ones that are the edges of the Sierra Pelona where I'm sitting, are cupped in shadow. And so the contrast is spectacular. And then these little fingers of fog are trailing between the mountain cliffs across the way from me. What I'm trying to tell you is here on Monday, April, whatever it is, 11th? Yes, at 6:48 p.m., my now is spectacularly beautiful. I'm comfortably sitting in my study with Minerva asleep in the captain's chair, stealing it from me. And it's all funny and beautiful and sweet. Why is this not good enough? Why should I look forward to bad things? Why do I not stay in this moment? What's really critical is when you look at staying in this moment, being present in this moment, in the overall scheme of ACT, when you think of this as these are the things that people fail that lead them into mental health treatment. And when you succeed with these things, you get mental health. And when you look at it in that bigger picture, you realize if you're not living in the now, the rest kind of doesn't matter. How would you ever talk about yourself in context, for example? How would you ever talk about thought diffusion, because if you're not in the now, you really are going to have fused thoughts. You really are just going to be, every bad moment is defining me. I can't move on. I can't come into a better moment, into a good now. So living in the now sounds so simple, and it's so difficult to practice. Trust me. I would also say that, and we're going to get to this in a different format next time around, but this also touches radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is about, I am here and now, whether or not it is fair, whether or not I'm getting what I deserve, I am just here and now. And I have to function here and now. So let's be in the pandemic. If I don't have my vaccine for COVID in the now, I'm simply not safe. So I can't just say, tomorrow I will go to a concert. If I haven't been vaccinated, now I'm going to be deeply unsafe in the future. I can project that much. So you have to be here. You have to be dealing with, what do I need right here, right now, to make things happen. The other aspect of this is, strangely, it's always presented as somehow kind of bad or scary, like, will you stop living in the future? No, that's not what I'm doing. The now is this incredibly useful thing, because you do plan a future if you can. So in things you can control, you try to make plans for the good. So, for example, this week, my contract with Doxy.me, which is a secure website for therapy, that renewed. So this week I paid for it. That's great. In the now I paid for it. At the same time, I was able to plan for it. I knew it would happen. I was able to put money aside, and it did happen. The same is true about us going to Yosemite, that here I now know that in September we will be in Yosemite. And as I sit in the now, I say, what would make that future better? And this moment gives me the chance to plan and to schedule. And so I did. I worked on, what do we need to go to Yosemite? Well, the big one is we need our animals fed. And that's going to be two aspects. One is someone managing the outside animals, dropping by and feeding them. And that's going to mean we have to have food for them. And it has to be labeled so the other person can find this. And then what do we do with the indoor animals? And that means going to a kennel, and that means making sure the vaccines are updated, everybody's healthy. So here in the now, I get the unique privilege of fixing those things so that the future, the immediate future and the long term, are good. And that is a huge gift, to have the time and the calm to work on things in the now. So I sit here now, and one of the concerns is cleaning the litter box every day. And you think, well, so what? Yahoo, big deal. Well, imagine living in Kyiv in the Ukraine. Imagine, or Mariupol. Imagine you want to clean your cat's litter box and you're living in a town. Do I keep coming back to the Ukraine? Yes, because I'm horrified by it. But unfortunately, it makes for easy examples at moments like this, for very clear, somewhat extreme examples. But, you can't always clean the litter box. That's what I'm saying. That the gift of the good now is that it allows you to prepare for good future. So yeah, my bathroom doesn't stink at night. My cat isn't doing terrible things, and we're all friends. So the now is a precious and beautiful thing that gives us the gift of preparation and planning and anticipating positive future events, which is part of the positive psychology of the PERMA skills, which we will come back to. So now is a precious gift, and now everything is good. And there are times, as I'll talk about with Eleanor later on, I worry about the future, and I worry about my animal's health, because Eleanor and Blankets are both getting on in life. And we have the strange and unpredictable replacements in the form of Captain and Minerva, which I never saw coming. Minerva has been such a challenging cat for 4 years, and she suddenly turned into a wonderful cat. And Captain is turning into a challenging puppy, but these are phases. But I think about that, and I think, oh, I'm not ready for this, I'm not ready for this. And I realize I'm not facing this. In the now, I have my wonderful animals and my wonderful family, and we're here together on my wonderful farm, and things are good. And so holding the now and valuing the now is part of mindfulness and radical acceptance. And it's part of the most precious and valuable aspects of life. And so being in the now is a source of extreme happiness if your now is pretty successful. And it is a great gift to have it. So one of the great skills of acceptance and commitment therapy, of all therapy, is recognizing the value of this now and letting this now dictate yourself in context and the decisions that you are making that are effective right now. Speaking of good decisions, there's links to help the Ukraine, just saying. In the fluffy books, well, I'm back at Benjamin Franklin, the film on PBS. I have a link to PBS in the show notes. And I did get to finish watching it, and I got to say, it's just great. It is a really great 4-hour series on Franklin's life. There are places I might have played it a little differently, but I got my wish about the discussion of race. That at the end, they talk about the end of the revolution and the Constitutional Convention. The guy is in his 80s, and he's still cranking. He's been extremely successful in France. And at the end, the historians kind of all nod in unison and say basically the two guys who determined the success of the war were Benjamin Franklin and George Washington, which, by the way, is exactly what was recognized at the time. That they were specifically honored at the beginning of the Constitutional Convention. And at the end of all this, they talk about why the Constitution and how good is it. And they use Ben Franklin's words on it. And he basically says, we have to organize fast because the French government is now falling under the revolutionary pressures and the British are waiting to come after us, that they don't expect us to make it. And Franklin did not want the revolution. Franklin wanted some kind of repair with Great Britain, and the British Admiral Howe was sent over to try and do that, and the Brits recognized that Franklin wanted that. And it failed. And so Franklin always had very mixed feelings, but once he committed, and he committed fully to the American cause. And at the end of the war, he basically says, we got to take what we got. That if we don't organize the government quickly, we're going to go under. There's too many other imperial pressures that are going to bring us down. And so he pushes for the Constitution and he says, it isn't perfect, but we have to do this now. History would seem to have supported that because the British do come back in 1812 and they do try to take the states back. And they do it in a much smarter way. That one of the things you get from watching the episodes on the Revolution is that the Brits were caught off guard, that they tried to do a land war and they were outnumbered, but also the Americans were better at guerrilla warfare, frankly. And the Americans hold on just long enough for the French fleet to show up and interfere with the British fleet. Now, with the French going under to revolutionary forces in the later years, in the 1780s, the British Army isn't the deciding factor, the British Navy is. And so in the 1812 war, the Brits start taking over American seagoing vessels and claiming that they're actually British citizens. That's a pretty clear statement. They're coming back. They want the colonies back. And I think it's pretty likely having a constitution that organized the states allowed for the response. And of course, the bigger issue there is, can you really fight a colonial war against armed and committed people who look like you and act like you and think like you with an ocean between you? This isn't simply overrunning people whose gun technology is not as good as yours, or a bunch of people who you can infect with smallpox, if you follow my drift. So that leads to a very good discussion of America's original sin, as they call it, which is slavery. And you realize in the discussion, this could go on for another 4 hours, that it is a good and interesting discussion. And at this point, Franklin is not happy with slavery, and so immediately after the Constitution is ratified, which he does sign, he moves on to abolitionist work in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania has always been proud of that tradition, of the anti-slavery tradition, that we were one of the first states. And that was under the leadership of Benjamin Franklin, who is arguably our greatest adopted son. So we finally do get to race, and we talk about why. Why in the Revolution is this tolerated, that we're going to continue slavery? And again, part of it is the Northerners knowing they can't economically do without the farmlands of the South, and the Southerners are completely committed to keeping slavery because they've built an economy on it, which is just shameful, and it just is. There it is. And the Northerners also, I would suspect, have a very skewed and blinkered version of what is going on in the South with slavery, that a lot of them think it's like, oh, these are house servants with a few less rights than a white guy would have. And I think you also, I'm not going to make excuses for this, but I think part of what's feeding their view is a lot of Northerners, including Benjamin Franklin, have been indentured servants. And Franklin ran away. He was indentured to his brother, and he ran away as a printer from Boston, came to Philadelphia. Franklin has 2 slaves. One of them runs away, and he noticeably doesn't chase the guy. It would be impossible for a man as smart as Benjamin Franklin not to see the similarity between him running away from his older brother and this slave running away from him. And it is possible that he sees these as similar, equivalent situations. These guys, he and his slave, are running away from indentured servitude. I think one of the issues is the Northerners, it may be willful, don't get me wrong, are trying to see slavery as a slightly more stressful version of house servitude, where you're dressed like the family, educated like the family, etc. And I think is really likely, when you read Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin, she talks about this. She talks about this willful deception, that it's all okay because we practice it in a nicer way. But anyway, that all comes into it. There's not enough room, if you're talking about Ben Franklin, to finish the discussion, I would say. And let me tell you, the Native Americans, they really give a pass to. There's one comment that I thought was very interesting, and I'd love to hear somebody go on more about this, is that the Native American tribes during the Revolution sided primarily with the British. And that means that after the Revolution, a lot of the Americans who were the patriots, who were fighting for freedom, are viewing the Native Americans as the opponents in the war who lost. So they take what they get. Curiously, in the American Civil War, when the white people in the South lost, we didn't make them take what they got. We were a lot nicer to them. In other words, don't be an idiot. Race and skin color and all that is feeding into this. But the series is very good. Benjamin Franklin, it's in 2 parts on PBS. It's Ken Burns. It's very good. It leaves you hungry for more. And if you're going to watch it thoughtfully, I would say, you want to hear more about the race issues at the time in the Revolution. There is a documentary to be made about the participation of immigrants, women, and people of color, and probably Native Americans in the American Revolution. There is a huge wad of missing history there. Are they going to squeeze it into a film devoted to Franklin? No, they're not. It's too big. The film would go on for hours and would be off the focus on Franklin. The film does a remarkable job of recreating the life of a truly remarkable individual. I think if I were to say, all right, let's try and keep it focused on Franklin where you can, I'd say the biggest issue is still for me, once you start the American Revolution, there's not a lot new there. You feel like he talks about the rights of the native peoples of America before the Revolution, and all that just vanishes. I find that very interesting. So that would be my weakness, but it really leaves you hungry for more, and it really suggests where there are good research-based documentaries to be made here. Something I really like, let's be honest, keto ice cream, Rebel ice cream. Now, keto ice creams, there are a lot of people who claim to be keto, and you have to be very, very careful. I've let other people do this research for me. The clear winner is Rebel ice cream. And Rebel ice cream, be very careful that you actually read what's on the carton, because it has all these wild colors on the carton. It may not look like what you think it's going to look like. So just be advised to read the name on the carton for the flavor of the ice cream. Rebel makes a lot of good flavors. They use sugar alcohol in the form of erythritol, which is what Swerve uses, which does not make my sugar go up, which is nice for me. And so they tell you the net grams of carb. There's more than that. I don't usually go by net grams of carb, but when I need an ice cream fix, I go get me some Rebel. It's not cheap. It's about $7 at Target. No, sorry, $7 at our local market. It's about, I think it's 5 at Target, 6 at Target, 5 at Walmart. And we don't talk about Walmart, no. But anyway, I'm very fond of Rebel ice cream. Favorite flavors, hands down, anything called chip. Because when they say such and such chip, they mean with keto chocolate chips. They have a cherry chip, ooh la la. They have mint chip, oh yeah. And they have coffee chip, to die for. My gripe, they use peanut butter freely. Peanut butter is not keto. It is starchy. It adds unnecessary starch. And it often doesn't blend well, so you'll get like chocolate peanut butter, and the peanut butter will be peeling away in strips. So I don't bother if there's peanut butter in it, and I don't feel good when I eat peanut butter either. This may vary by who you are, but Rebel ice cream. And of course, Rebel ice cream leads to the car picnic, where I buy some and I drive around for 10 minutes till it softens, and I keep plastic spoons in my car. And I have car picnics where you park the car, you turn on your favorite podcast, you put a novel on the Kindle on your phone in your lap, hooked up to the charger. You have nice water bottle with you, good water, maybe some electrolytes. And then you have your car picnic. And I tell you, this is what I learned in the quarantine, that car picnics rock. Anyway, Rebel ice cream. Look in the weird ice cream case at your local supermarket. Okay, so let's get on to the blather. Well, first of all, the back sprain is healing very well. I do still have kind of twinginess around my waist and hips, but really this could have been so much worse. And most of the time I'm just fine as long as I'm not in the car for too long. And that's obviously going to go away too. So that's really the good news. And then Eleanor, we got her groomed, and she's starting to have a little problem that is easily apparently corrected by medication. She's a little bit messy with her bladder. And so that was nice, because we got her really groomed up and kind of could see under all that big collie fluff what was going on. And she's a happier person too. Her groom went really, really well. And we had them really shave the back end of her so the vet could see her well. So she looks a little silly from the back. But she's doing well. And at 10 years old, with a form of immunological illness that sort of functions in her nose, that she has a kind of nose issue that we medicate, she's holding up well. So she's got another vet appointment a week from today. And she's a little bit sad because we're keeping her outside a lot because she's sort of splatting in places. But on the whole, we're all hugging and loving on Eleanor. I did transition her to a really nice food, a damp food, because she just sort of decided she doesn't like the hard kibble anymore. And so we just said, let's humor her and have the vet look at her teeth too, just in case, because she's 10 years old. And so, you know, we still have our girl and we love her. In the meantime, the pup date, well, I'll tell you, Captain was a hero. That I didn't know it. I let the dogs out. Yes, Minerva's giving me a filthy look. I let the dogs out a few days ago, and Sly Boots Minerva slipped out with them and was outside for a few hours. And so I think I was talking to a patient, and I heard Captain barking hysterically. That's right, I'm telling that story. Don't give me that look. Captain was barking hysterically, and then I heard Eleanor join in more as a hey, stop barking kind of thing, which Eleanor will do. And I went out, and Captain had pinned Minerva to the patio concrete and was not letting her up. That I think Minerva had gone out of the yard, and she came back in, and Captain caught her and basically said, you're not allowed to do this, and held her in place till I got there. And so I picked her up, and Captain was very angry at her. Captain was basically smacking her with Captain's own nose, was whapping her, and was very much disciplinary, like, you don't leave the yard. You're not allowed to do this stuff. So you don't know whether to laugh or cry or scream, but I was really impressed with Captain's intelligence. Minerva sits with me here now. She's bathing herself in that way cats do to show you they don't care about your stupid story. But I have to say, we owe Captain one, that I didn't even realize she was out there, and Captain found her, caught her, and held her like a good herding dog should. Captain caught my wandering lamb in a cat suit. So all I can say, so well done, Captain. So, Minerva gets the last word, and her last word would be stuff your rescue. But she is here, and she is with us, and she is well. And I'm just very grateful for that. And she's bathing herself in the way cats do to let you know that you're wrong and they don't care what you think. But we're all here together, and we're all doing well, and it's really nice now that Captain's been neutered and the shots have all been gotten and the husband has his eye surgery and we've ordered hay for the month and I've paid off all these subscription things for my private practice that come around this time of year, like my Doxy account and all that. I'm sitting in this nice quiet place where we're slowly going into recovery and we're just paying off bills and sitting here quietly in the spring. I do have reservations in early June. I will be going to Mammoth. That is Mammoth Lakes. If you would like to see me in Mammoth, let me know. Sure, why not? Just put a comment if you want to come visit. I will be at Juniper Lodge, and I'm really looking forward to the vacation. And other things coming up in September, we have a place at the Yosemite Valley Lodge for a few days. The whole family's going. So that will be wonderful. And I'm trying to get reservations next June for Bright Angel Lodge in the Grand Canyon. And that will be very, very cool. So hopefully we will get there in June. Cross your fingers. They don't open the reservations until June 1st, but we are waitlisted, so I'm hoping we get in. And also there is Stitches Southwest coming up in, I think, November, and it's in Pasadena. And I'm looking forward to a lot of people I think I know will be there who I haven't seen now in years. So I don't think I can take time off from work, but I'm seriously considering sharing a room with my good friend Danny and also hanging out there. And I may just bring my computer and see patients those days so that I don't lose the time off from work or I only take partial time off. And also, I'm not that interested in going to Stitches. I just want to see everybody. I don't really want to buy yarn. I've got way too many projects. And so, there's a lot of nice things coming up on the calendar, and we'll see how they all work out. In the meantime, the usual precautions are in place, which is none. Everybody's walking around without masks here in LA County. When I go into a store, I put a mask on. I carry an N95 in my bag. I still do it. I don't care what other people are doing. I have my 4th shot. After a few days, the big pustules and the swelling and the fangs went away. No kidding. It made no difference whatsoever. I felt fine. I got a little feverish, I think, that night. I was a little tired the next day. And to me, it's just, I was reading the latest studies on it. It sort of looks like you get one of the boosters every 4 to 6 months. But even without them, they're saying you're pretty good. You're not likely to die of COVID. I'm not willing to play I Bet My Life, but if you want to play You Bet Your Life, absolutely. I got no interest in that. And I'm walking around thinking the mask is to protect people from me. It's not giving me a lot of protection, but an N95, that's not true. It does protect you. So at this point, we're all sort of playing let's guess how dangerous it is, while our friends in Western Europe are still experiencing it as very. So, I have really mixed feelings about this. I'm just acting like it's here, it's around. And wearing a mask means I don't get a cold, I don't get the flu. I'm good with all of that. So all I would tell you is, wear your mask, wash your hands, preserve physical distance, socialize online where you can to get comfort, get your shots. And all of this is open to conjecture and you got to use your best sense. But I'm pretty happy with my decisions. In the meantime, the whole point of this is to stay safe. And most of all, to take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.